First, story, The Harlequin of Hollow Creek. It was a cold November night in Hollow Creek, a quiet town tucked deep in the forests of Maine. The streets were empty, the air thick with mist, and the only sound was the occasional rustle of leaves. I was patrolling the area, as usual, when the calls started coming in, one after another. Residents reported seeing a clown lurking near the woods at the edge of town. But this was no ordinary clown. They said it was tall, its face pale as death, with a twisted smile that sent shivers down their spines. Deputy Walters, this thing took my neighbor's kid. A panicked caller told me over the radio. Please, do something. I drove to the edge of the forest, my hand resting on my sidearm. The woods were silent, unnaturally so, as if even the animals had fled. Then I saw it. The clown stood among the trees, its bright costume a grotesque contrast to the darkness around it. "Freeze!" I shouted, aiming my gun. It didn't move. Instead, it tilted its head and laughed. The sound wasn't human. It was low, grating, and echoed as if coming from every direction. I fired a shot, but the clown darted into the shadows with unnatural speed. Determined to end this, I followed it deeper into the forest. Hours passed, and the trail grew cold. Exhausted and frustrated, I climbed onto a nearby water tower with my binoculars to scan the town. And then I saw it. The clown stood on the roof of an abandoned factory at the edge of town, waving at me. I rushed to the factory, my pulse racing. Inside, the air was stale, the walls covered in faded graffiti. I called out, "Show yourself!" My voice echoed through the halls. A faint giggle answered me, coming from the shadows. I moved cautiously toward the sound, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. And then I saw them. Rows of missing posters pinned to the wall. Each one of a child gone missing in Hollow Creek over the years. Before I could react, the clown lunged at me from the darkness. Its strength was inhuman, its eyes burning with a malevolent light. I fought it off, managing to fire a shot that sent it screaming into the shadows once more. By the time backup arrived, the clown was gone. But the town was never the same. The residents locked their doors at night, and I could never shake the feeling that it was still out there, watching, waiting for its next victim. Second story, The Shadows of Morrison Hill. It was a quiet spring night when I first received the call to Morrison Hill, a sleepy village nestled in the forests of Maine. The dispatcher sounded shaken as she relayed the details. A family reported hearing footsteps in their home despite being alone. I arrived at the residence around midnight. The house was an old Victorian structure perched on the edge of a dark forest. The family stood on the porch, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. Officer, the father, Mark, stammered. We heard someone walking upstairs, and then the whispering started. With my flashlight in hand and my radio ready, I entered the house. The air inside was stale, and each creak of the wooden floors echoed like a gunshot. I checked every room on the ground floor, but found nothing unusual. When I ascended the stairs, the atmosphere changed. The air was heavier, almost oppressive, and the temperature dropped noticeably. As I opened the door to one of the bedrooms, my flashlight flickered before going out. I stood there in the pitch blackness, listening. That was when I heard it, a whisper, soft and indistinct. It sounded like someone speaking just behind me. I spun around, shining my backup light, but the hallway was empty. My radio crackled to life with static, and a faint, distorted voice said, "Leave." Ignoring the chill running down my spine, I entered the master bedroom. There was a mirror on the far wall, and in the dim light, I saw my reflection. But then I realized something was off. The reflection wasn't mine anymore. It was a man with sunken eyes and a twisted smile, watching me intently. I felt paralyzed, unable to look away as the figure reached out from the mirror. The room filled with a low rumbling sound as the walls seemed to close in. Summoning every ounce of courage or the faith were I turned and ran down the stairs out of the house. Outside, the family was gone. Their car was still there, but there was no trace of them. As I radioed for backup, I heard the whispering again, this time coming from the forest. I stood there, alone under the moonlight, realizing that whatever haunted Morrison Hill was far from over. Third story, The Whispers of Hollow Creek. It was a frigid winter night when I arrived in Hollow Creek, a small town tucked away in the forests of Maine. As a rookie police officer, I was sent here to cover for the local sheriff, who had fallen ill. Hollow Creek was known for its isolation and eerie legends, but I didn't pay much mind to the stories. That night, however, changed everything. The police station was a cramped building with flickering fluorescent lights. As I settled into the desk, a call came through the radio. "Officer, we've got a disturbance at the old Willow Manor," the dispatcher said. Her voice trembled, but she didn't explain why. I grabbed my jacket, not expecting much. The manor was an abandoned estate on the outskirts of town, shrouded by gnarled trees and snow-covered paths. The locals avoided it, claiming it was haunted by the family who once lived there. I dismissed the tales as nonsense as I pulled up to the property. But the moment I stepped out of the car, an unmistakable feeling of dread washed over me. The door to the manor creaked open as I approached, even though the wind was still. "Police!" I called out. My voice echoed in the halls, but no answer came. The air inside was thick with the scent of mold and something metallic. I flashed my light around the room, noticing furniture covered in white sheets and deep scratches along the walls. As I ventured deeper into the house, I heard it. A whisper. Faint, but unmistakable. "Leave," it said, sending a chill down my spine. I spun around, expecting to find someone, but the hallway was empty. My instincts told me to get out, But my pride kept me moving forward. The whispers grew louder as I reached the basement door. It was ajar, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Against my better judgment, I descended, the floorboards groaning under my weight. At the bottom, I found a circle of candles, long extinguished, and a mirror propped against the wall. My reflection stared back, but then it smiled. I staggered back, my heart pounding. The reflection stepped out of the mirror, its eyes cold and lifeless. "You shouldn't have come," it whispered. The next thing I knew, the room went dark. I woke up in my car hours later, the manor nowhere in sight. The radio crackled, but all I could hear were those whispers echoing in my head. I resigned the next day, but the whispers never left.